Time for tonight's rewrite. Andrew Breitbart's own worst enemy, Andrew Breitbart, worked the stage like a foul-mouthed stand-up comedian at T-Con, a Tea Party conference in Chicago this weekend. This obviously wasn't the Southern Baptist branch of the Tea Party that Breitbart was pandering to, because they took particular delight in his use of profanity, especially sexist profanity directed at women Breitbart and his audience hate intensely. The nasty word he threw at Nancy Pelosi delighted his audience more than anything else he had to say.
It was orchestrated by a bitch by the name of Nancy Pelosi who a half hour later.
Now, comedians who use the full range of expression that includes very colorful street language, you know, like all the words I can't say on this program, those comedians are all smart and respectful enough to not do it on a stage with 7 American flags behind them. The greatest and most verbally free-spirited modern comedians, from Lenny Bruce to Richard Pryor to Robert Klein to Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, I could go on and on, all of them have publicly exhibited more respect for the American flag than Andrew Breitbart. Professional comedians know better. They do not festoon their stages with American flags, then go out there and do their thing. Andrew Breitbart's ugliest, unfunny punches were thrown at my friend Janeane Garofalo.
Onslaught of propaganda led by the execrable Janeane Garofalo. I actually had something really mean to say about her. Really? Yeah. Well, I live in LA, so I know about her, and she's Hollywood's sympathy. Every single job is like, no, I kind of feel sorry for her. Why don't we cast her as the loser in the movie?
I know many of you now are seething with hatred of Andrew Breitbart. I'm not. I feel sorry for him. I really do. You heard him say, I live in LA, so I know about her. The only thing that's true about that is that he lives in LA. Andrew Breitbart knows nothing about Janeane Garofalo. When I see him on that stage, I see little Andrew Breitbart, who grew up in Los Angeles in the shadow of show business and craved getting through the studio gates. He never made it through the studio gates into show business and intensely resents every other local kid who did, like Sean Penn, for example, who he visits hatred upon at every chance. You saw little Andrew Breitbart up on the stage with that microphone, loving it, absolutely loving it. You saw Andrew Breitbart trying to be an entertainer. You see in that clip how he sees himself. Funny, entertaining, deserving of a stage, deserving of a microphone, deserving of a spotlight, a star. The star he could have been if the local industry, show business, had just let him in. You've heard the cliche that politics is show business for ugly people. Now we see that Tea Party conferences are show business for Andrew Breitbart. There you see an angry, frustrated, resentful little boy's dream come true. He's on stage, getting laughs and applause. Little Andrew Breitbart is so proud of this performance that he put it on his website. That's where we found it. Breitbart says he lives in LA, so he knows about Janeane Garofalo. That's like saying you live in New York, so you know about David Letterman. Andrew Breitbart is one of millions of people who live in LA and actually know nothing about Janeane Garofalo and actors and other celebrities they've never met or talked to. He proves that, in Janeane's case, by portraying her as someone who gets cast in movies and TV shows only out of sympathy. Because, why? Apparently because her career isn't going so great? In fact, Janeane Garofalo is a very, very successful actress and stand-up comedian who over the last 20 years has always had far more offers than she could accept. She's always been acting on more than one project at once, more than one project every year, from The Ben Stiller Show to Saturday Night Live to Mr. Show with Bob and David to the best comedy in the history of television, The Larry Sanders Show. And yes, she did squeeze in episodes of Seinfeld in the middle of the Larry Sanders run. I met Janeane Garofalo when we were lucky enough to cast her in The West Wing in 2005. There was no sympathy involved. She was our first choice for the new role we were writing in the series, and the only question was, would Janeane Garofalo accept our offer? We were lucky. She did. And she made every line we wrote for her better on the screen than it was on the page. After her run on The West Wing, it was certainly not out of sympathy that Rush Limbaugh's favorite TV creator and executive producer, Joel Surnow, cast Janeane Garofalo on 24 as an America-protecting FBI agent. Janeane Garofalo will always have a special place reserved for her in little Andrew Breitbart's profanity-laced stand-up act because Janeane Garofalo was right about the most important question that has faced this country in the 21st century, the question that gripped this country like no other could in 2003. Does Saddam Hussein have weapons of mass destruction? Janeane Garofalo did her homework, studied everything she could. She worked very hard, studying all the information that was publicly available to her, and she got that question right. She was smarter than I was on that question. My answer was, I don't know if Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Janeane Garofalo was also smarter than the director of the CIA on the most important question that he ever had to answer in his life. He got it wrong. He said it was a slam dunk that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Janeane Garofalo was smarter than the Secretary of Defense on that question. She was smarter than the Secretary of State. She was smarter than the Vice President. And yes, Janeane Garofalo was smarter than the President of the United States. She was also smarter than Andrew Breitbart on that question, and she was much smarter than this guy.
If you are wrong, all right? And if the United States, and they will, this is going to happen, goes in, liberates Iraq, people in the street, American flags, hugging our soldiers, all right? We find all kinds of bad stuff, all right, in Iraq. You going to apologize to George W. Bush?
I would be so willing to say I'm sorry. I hope to God that I can be made a buffoon of, that people will say you were wrong, you were a fatalist, and I would go to the White House on my knees on cut glass and say, hey, you were right.
There's Bill O'Reilly, guaranteeing Janeane Garofalo, guaranteeing her that they will find weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And the honorable and decent Janeane Garofalo that I know has no trouble, no reluctance, promising to apologize to everyone in sight, including the President of the United States, if O'Reilly and the President turned out to be right and she turned out to be wrong. And I know Janeane Garofalo would have made good on that promise. Janeane Garofalo may not be very tall, but she's a big enough person to apologize when she's wrong. I wish, I really, really do wish that I could say the same thing about little Andrew Breitbart.
On that note, let's bring in comedian, raconteur, and Countdown's man about town, Janeane Garofalo.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
First off, if I may,
yes.
Can I just jump right in?
Go right ahead.
Andrew Breitbart, first and foremost, has no credibility. He is a guy, sort of like an Andy Kaufman-esque, Tony Clifton type character. It's his job, I guess, he thinks, to manufacture outrage and to throw red meat out to people who are easily manipulated. And with that, with the mask, the gorilla, that gorilla mask is immaterial. What he was saying is, smells like Bristol Palin, smells like Tea Party. I don't think there was any deeper meaning besides Bristol Palin as probably would identify as a Tea Partier.
One would
this
think.
smells like that. And then I think he's calling for a boycott or something. Andrew's trying to manufacture this
Well,
kind
Chaz
of...
Bono's on the show, too, so...
Right.
And Nancy Grace, so...
So there's some reason to attack. 'Cause I'm sure there's a right-wing letter writing because Chaz Bono is on because they have problems with the gay, lesbian, transgendered community.
But Tony Clifton, Andy Kaufman, they knew they were doing that as opposed to just being sort of involuntary.
Oh, Andrew Breitbart knows
You think he
is
knows he's a
full
fraud?
of it. Andrew Breitbart knows he is dishonest, but also another level that's going on here, which I don't think was going on with Andy Kaufman, is that Andrew Breitbart, I suspect, is dealing with his inner dysfunctions and demons and playing them out on a national stage. He's got some issues. Anyone who does what he does is a person struggling with their own probably self-loathing. And again, I'll say it. I've said it before. I know a lot about self-loathing.
Yes,
There's
right.
no
This
one
is
who
not-
can speak more to self-loathing.
You are putting
than
yourself
I
out
have
there
the
first.
decency to hate
Yes.
myself. Andrew Breitbart may not have the decency to hate himself.
And
No,
now
he doesn't have the
But you
decency.
know his denial of your claim that he knows he's dishonest is he's going to have to now come out and say, I know I'm not dishonest. Or
Well-
I don't know I'm dishonest.
Well,
that's the one. It's I don't know I'm dishonest. That's his denial of what you just said.
Well, of course he would say that,
course he would say that.
he's like a performance artist, or like a merry prankster, if you will, or a situationist. I hate to just bring all these references in, but
Merry pranksters,
Merry prankster, but they're
are
nice.
funny.
No, they're nice.
They're funny.
I'm saying it's the
They're
dark
funny.
side.
They're funny. Tony Clifton was funny in one respect.
But he was mean-spirited.
Yes.
That's why I use Tony Clifton
right,
and
okay.
not other Andy Kaufman characters.
Quickly on the premise here, Herb Cain, you have a theory about this?
Oh, I thought actually she was saying Herm. I honestly thought Sarah Palin was using nicknames to be all down home and folksy.
So you thought we were just mishearing Herm for
No,
Herb?
she may well have been saying Herb. And I would say some other things with the credibility thing about that. As Andrew Breitbart has no credibility, I believe Sarah Palin and Fox News and News Corp have none. So there's no reason to really bother getting into it. And Herman Cain is probably well liked by some of the Republicans because it hides the racist elements of the Republican Party, conservative movement, and Tea Party movement, one and the same. People like Karl Rove like to keep the racism very covert. And so Herman Cain provides this great opportunity so that you can say, look, this is not a racist, anti-immigrant, anti-female,
We have Herb over
anti-gay
here.
movement. Look, we have a black man.
We got Harry over here.
And look, he's polling well, and he won a straw
Hank
poll.
over here.
Herm. I
Hal
thought she
over-
was saying Herm because she was being all kind of nicknaming.
All right, lastly, I want to give
Yes?
you a chance to chime in on Occupy Wall Street. Is the media
Yes.
ignoring it? It seems like that has not been the case the last 24 hours.
Well, I think the media, for the most part, mainstream media tends to ignore any kind of outside of the establishment box movements, especially if they're considered to be on the left. And they do have a clear message. It's called Occupy Wall Street. Wall Street. It's not called Occupy just this floor or this table. And we are the 99%ers, which they're saying means we are the 99% of citizens who have no voice in government. The message, I think, seems very, very clear. And sometimes people bring the Tea Party and compare them. The Tea Party is an establishment movement funded by and supported by corporate money and a propaganda network, and they have messaging people like Frank Luntz or people who do these things in the echo chamber, Grover Norquist.
Right.
This on Occupy Wall Street is a real grassroots people movement with a message. And,
My message to you, though, is I'm out of time.
And happy Rosh Hashanah.
Janeane Garofalo,
message.
the not really man about town. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.